All right. All right. You're all right. I just wanted to see you run. I would like to call to order the October 21st, 2024 meeting of Oregon City Council for Committee of the Whole. The time is 7 p.m. Would you all join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Sorry, just looking through my list. Thank you. This is a committee of the whole meeting. There is no requirement for attendance from council members. However, note that all council members are present this evening. Also present at the meeting tonight is Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Mazer, Clerk of Council Cassie Rawson, Public Service Director Paul Roman, Assistant Chief of Police Ryan Spangler, and that's it. Thank you. Folks, first item that we have is persons and/or delegations. We do have a few people signed in to speak this evening. And as a reminder, I'd ask everybody to try to keep it to about 3 to 5 minutes. At about 4 minutes, we'll kind of give you a little high sign so we know we're trying to wrap up. First person we have to come forward is Quinn McDougall. And Mr. McDougall, will ask you to state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name's Quinn McDougall. My address is 1135 Earlwood, Oregon, Ohio. Is that better? Okay. I first would like to thank council for having me tonight, and I hope you all received the proposal that I delivered earlier. I'm Quinn McDougall, founder of Rita's Soups. We started this food ministry in 2021 at St. Paul's Episcopal on the corner of Coy and Navarre. We started it with a $500 check from my mother's friend and free will donations ever since. This food ministry makes 3 gourmet soups a month between September and May. We give every person 2 pints of soup, bread, dessert, and other treats that will make 2 meals for them for a month. I do this on the 3rd Saturday of each month. During the months of June and August, we make 1 soup and give fixings for like sandwiches, like chicken salad, ham and cheese, stuff like that. We also give desserts and enough for 2 meals during the summer months. Last year was our first Thanksgiving meal to feed the community. We fed roughly between 300 to 450 meals that we delivered to homebound people, people that attended the church meal for a social gathering, and to break bread over a community meal. Right? We are asking for a $2,000 donation to help with the Thanksgiving meal, and funds that were left over from the meal will continue this ministry throughout the year, the rest of the year. Again, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. We appreciate you coming in and appreciate the work that you're doing with Rita's Soups.
Thank you very
Certainly
much.
well appreciated by the community. In regards to requests, we're about heading into budget. We certainly can take that into consideration. Obviously, it's difficult for us to look at as many things as we get asked to, but certainly we'll have that conversation as we meet. Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Next person I have on the list is Doug Sweeney. Again, Doug will ask you to state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name's Doug Sweeney. My address is 8301 Arquette Road, Oregon, Ohio, 43616. And I am here on behalf of Reese Cross America. If many of you are familiar, maybe for the some that aren't, this program has started out in Arlington National Cemetery. We take care of our veterans buried all across the nation. When I first started this, there was 1,000 cemeteries involved. To this day, there's over 4,400 cemeteries across the nation that participate in this. I've been involved with this program for the last 7 years, 6 years in our local cemetery of Willow in Oregon North. I've also had the privilege of working at Oregon North, which when I see veterans, it brings a throb to my heart, because as we know, many of them don't get taken care of after they get put in the ground. This year we had Sergeant Jack Coy come home, and I'll tell you, when I heard that he came home, I'm about ready to cry, because 88 years missing out of his hometown. We did a great job here. I was glad to be part of that. But what I'm looking at this year is, I've been doing this for 6 years out here at Willow and Oregon North. The flagpole should be shiny. It should be new. We should respect our veterans. On a day of veterans buried at our local cemeteries, that flag should be at half staff, out of respect for what they have given us. That flagpole only gets used on Wreath Day. And I think there are 2 other ones in the cemetery, not visible from the road, no electric. If you haven't been to this ceremony, we're getting all types of people from all over. We're getting wheelchair-bound people, older people, kids in strollers. It makes my day to see the community come together so well. And this year, we're going to take a special time out for Staff Sergeant Jack Coy to make sure his family lays that first wreath this year. We'll also have 180th doing a flyover. I have a few helpers here. I've had TRC, I've had Cleveland Cliffs. I've even mailed council emails, and I've come over here to beckon money from you. You know, we shoot off fireworks for freedom each year, thousands of dollars of fireworks. But what about the man that lays in the ground that doesn't get his name announced? That, to me, it kills me, because they did more for freedom than the fireworks did. That was Thomas Jefferson's way of saying thank you across the great nation. I would like to beckon, you know, we have 14,000 and 1,400 in Willow, and we have almost 165 in Oregon North. I would like to see the city of Oregon even buy 1 wreath, because it would be better than what they've done in the past. I've had a couple council members show up, no big deal, but I'd like to see all your families there. I'd like this to be a family community day like Boomfest. It gets a little chilly, but we get donations. We have coffee and things for the kids. But most of all, I think it's a great learning experience for each and every kid to see people come together. And yeah, I could use that flagpole in the back, but how do you get somebody to sing the national anthem? How do you get, I mean, where's the electricity? Where's the shelter for our old folks? I'm not just doing this for 6 years. My goal is to be able to have a list of emails for the next generation to come up and say, this is where we get this money from. And it's been good in the past. This year I'm struggling a little bit. I'm knocking on a lot of doors, and that's why I'm standing here, because maybe some people don't know what goes on out there, but it's December 14th at noon. And it goes on at the same time all across the nation. And when you walk through there, we ask each and every person to say the name of that veteran, because it might have been a long time since that veteran's name has been stated. If we can come out with a force that we did for Staff Sergeant Jack Coy, that place will be packed. It'll be packed, and I just want to keep sharing this with this country. Every year for the last 7 years, I've been taking a group of men over to Arlington National Cemetery. I've had the privilege of mowing. You say that's a privilege? It is an honor to take care of that place. I've gotten more respect for what goes on those hallowed grounds, and I look for each and every veteran that's buried to get the same respect across this country. We shall not fail them, and we shall always remember. And if any, You know, I could sit here and throw out a number, but I don't have a number that would fit my head, nor I don't know where your pockets are at, but it would be better than last year or the year before and the previous years. 0 or something. And you know, you guys get into your chambers. I wish you would take this to full heart, because if you haven't been out there, please come out and see this. It's spectacular. There's been a couple council members there. I would love to see you all there. You got plenty of notice, December 14th at noon. And this year, like I said, we're going to take care of Sergeant Stepp and have his family over there to lay memorial, not, you know, in memory. He will be there. What an honor. What an honor. And so is this to be able to come in here and speak to you people. You run this city, show me what you got. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Appreciate your comments and your passion, your efforts for what you do. Again, same discussion. Obviously, we're heading into those discussions at this time, so certainly something we can talk about as we enter into that. The last person I have is Pam Tedker. Not speaking? Okay, very good. So that's the last person I have for this evening. Thank you both for coming in and for your passions and your efforts in the community. It's well appreciated by all members here, and I'm sure many in our community and outside our community. Moving into our agenda for this evening, first item we have is item 170 of 2024, being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Public Service Director Paul Roman. And we'll start with Mr. Roman. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to close out the safety, disinfection, and grit removal improvement project for the wastewater treatment plant. This is a project we've been working on for like 2 years. If you remember, we had a delay in waiting for a transformer to be delivered to the site. The project is a success, especially in receiving a $4.1 million grant from the Ohio Department of Development. The total change order amount for the project is $80,249, which is 1.4% of the construction costs. And also, from switching from chlorine as a disinfectant to UV, we have an operating savings of about $35,000 a year, which is definitely a benefit. So final change order for this project is a deduct of $3,945, and it's described in Exhibit A. There's a lot of items in there, and I'm, apologize, provided a lot of descriptions of what we provide, but that is required when the EPA, when we do a change order, to explain everything. So I just want to give a forecast here. Next month, we will be calculating and presenting a capital improvement charge, which goes towards paying the loan for the project. And certainly with the grant, that does does reduce the amount of loan, but there still will be a charge. It gets paid over 20 years. It'll be put on the sewer bill starting in January. And once that loan is paid off, it does come off the bill. And that's the same for all of our capital improvement charges, how we've been doing it for the last 5 or 6 years. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
thank you. Mr. Roman, these are the change orders I like compared to what the ones that we always get, that I shouldn't say always get now because of this, but that we get quite a few of them where the change orders are, that's what they're asking for, more money for projects. But thank you for all your hard work and all that stuff that you do and your staff. And I appreciate these kind of change orders. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Council, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll seek a motion to move item 170 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Slander.
I'd like to make a motion to move item 170 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Slander.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Pollock. Motion by Mr. Slander, seconded by Mrs. Pollock to move item 170 to next week's agenda. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 170 is moved to next week's agenda. Item 171 of 2024, again presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Public Service Director Paul Roman. And again, we'll go to Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to purchase a temporary easement for the Navarre Avenue Safety Improvement Project. This purchase is from the subway property just east of the Kingston Court Drive. The easement is needed to provide space for the construction of a new traffic signal and a sidewalk along the east side of Kingston Court. So the cost and the description is included in Exhibit A. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions on item 171? Hearing none, council, I'll seek a motion to move item 171 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Yes.
Mr.
Go ahead.
President, so
Ms. Pollock.
moved.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Reeves. Motion by Ms. Pollock, seconded by Mr. Reeves to move item 171 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Council, is there any objection? Hearing none, item 171 of 2024 is moved to next week's agenda. Next item is items 172 of 2024 being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and City Administrator Joel Mazer, and we'll go to Mr. Mazer.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance would authorize the expenditure of funds to the Lucas County Regional 911 COG for the contract that we're in with them to provide those services. If you see in your packet, there's the latest invoice. The amount that we pay quarterly actually is going down this year. That is due to the proportional shares going down. So last year, we were at about 5.7% of all the calls. This past year, we're at about 5.4% of all the calls. So overall, our expenditures will be about $15,000 less than they were last year as a result. Another reason for that too is that the townships will be paying their 100% share of their calls as well. So I think that covers just about everything. So that's just a continuation of the contract, and this would authorize the expenditure of funds to the COG.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mazer. Council, any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Slander.
this is a pretty basic invoice without any sort of itemization or anything. I mean, personally, I'm not real comfortable about just having a piece of paper with just a number on it. Can I get, or can we get some breakdown of that to be able to see what we're paying for?
Mr.
Mr.
Mazer.
President, Mr. Slander, yes, we can, I'll put the request in. Usually they do a pretty good job of breaking down all the proportional shares of all the different communities. And we can even get a further breakdown of the calls. Usually when we get those, we review them internally to make sure that, quarterly, to make sure that we're not being overcharged for calls, or there's some things that are added on that we don't feel should be added on. So, and then in the event that we do find any that we shouldn't be charged for, we can dispute it. We haven't yet, as far as I know, since we've been doing this, but we've worked towards reducing the number of calls for service, and the fire department and police department have both done a very good job, in my opinion, of reducing the number of calls that they would charge us each and every time. So yeah, we can get a breakdown, and I know I've provided that in the past. This is just the invoice that we got, and this would authorize that expenditure. I don't know how recent their breakdown is, but we'll get what we can get. We'll have it in the packet for next week.
I'd appreciate that. Yeah,
Yep.
just make me feel a little more comfortable on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slander. Thank you, Mr. Mazer.
Mr.
Council,
President?
additional question. Mrs. Paulo.
It's my understanding, we're not only getting billed for calling 911, we're also getting billed for every time you use that radio. Am I correct?
Mr. Mazer, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, it's not every time we use the radio. It's when we have to call in to dispatch and
Right.
notify
Well,
them
that's
of
what I mean.
of when somebody goes in and out of service. And there is a and Assistant Chief Spangler could probably speak a little bit more eloquently about this, but there's a difference where we can call into dispatch and call out of service, and they would charge us for it, or we just click ourselves out of service and it's not charged. So that is one cleanup item we've been working on over the last 2 years.
Well,
And
yeah,
that has
that's
reduced-
what I
that
meant
has-
by radio. When they call dispatch from whether it's police or fire, there's certain things that are billed and certain things that aren't billed. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
some of them, yeah. And that's where our officers are now very cognizant of when to call into dispatch, when it's needed to be called into dispatch to be taken out of service, and when it's just, an internal, I don't know if you can help provide a couple of examples.
Yeah, Mr. President, if I may.
Go ahead, yeah, please.
So it's not, we don't get billed for every time we key the mic. We don't get called for every time that we, as law enforcement, pick up the phone and call our dispatcher. What we get billed for is every time a call for service is generated. And that is differentiated into call for service by number. So what Mr. Mazur is explaining is that there are times that where we used to generate a call for service number to take ourselves out of service, right? So working a project or being on a traffic special for a grant, those types of things. We have been continuing to work with the COG, and by we, I'm saying Lucas County wide. It's not just unique to Oregon. All of us are trying to find ways to change that proportional share so that we are paying directly for the calls for service that we're doing. So when Mr. Mazur is talking about, it's a difference of how, if we take ourselves out of service, by that he means on the MDT, we have out of service codes now. Before, those out of service codes always generated or spawned a call for service number. That no longer is the case. So anytime that we ask a dispatcher to put ourselves out of service, it does generate a call for service because they don't have a way or a mechanism to take ourselves out of service. And the reason for that is because they're all based on monitoring. So when we take ourselves out of service, we no longer show up as an available unit for them. Therefore, they're not monitoring us. If they put us out of service, we are still being monitored by them. We're still getting our regular checkups by our dispatch center for simply not answering the radio of those types of nature. It's just a way of taking ourselves out of service that is less work on the dispatcher, and we no longer show on their boards. We no longer are a responsible party to them. That's all it is. But as far as keying the mic, there's nothing that's monitored with that.
So when you're talking about taking out of service, when you're in service and like there's a fire and you go back and forth with dispatch, is that what they're monitoring, or they don't monitor?
They would, because it would generate a singular call for service number. So it would spawn a call for service for us. So as long as we're on that one call for service, that's one call for service. And we may have had 25 radio communications back and forth. It still is just one call for service.
Okay,
We're not getting billed for every time we pick up the phone or that we key that mic.
gotcha.
It's all just based on the call for service.
Thank you.
For sure. You're welcome. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
President.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Spangler. Thank you, Ms. Paul. Are there any additional questions on item 172? Hearing none, I'll seek a motion to move item 172 of 2024 to next week's agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Paul.
so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Paul.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Slander. Thank you, Mr. Slander. Motion by Ms. Paul, seconded by Mr. Slander to move item 172 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Counselor, is there any objection? Hearing none, item 172 is moved to next week's agenda. Moving on to the last printed item in our agenda this evening is item 173 of 2024, again presented by Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Mazur. And this one will start with the mayor. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, you're aware of the fact that we did purchase the old Kmart site, and now that we hold deed to it, we can put it in the hands of our developer so they can start enacting the process of building there. We have Bill Bosselman and Mike Denman here who are going to make, I think you're planning to come up here and give a little presentation about what you want to do. So we'll have you do that, and then we'll see if there's any comments thereafter that we will try to answer as we ask your consideration in approving this arrangement or this contract with them so they can start getting to work. So Mike, if you would.
Good evening.
And say your
Yeah,
name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
name and
Mike
address for the
Denman, 5215 Monroe Street, River Rock Properties, Toledo, Ohio. Yeah, so in all honesty, not a lot has changed since the 2 months ago that we were here. And, oh, excuse me for that. Sorry for that. And, you know, I think as we spoke the last time we were here, we really need to get leases signed, site plans going, drawings finished and all that. And though so much has been done since the last time we were here from our tenants' perspective and the tenants that we're out there trying to get, you know, nothing's really changed, right? When you look at how they see the project. We still don't own it. You know, and we're moving. We haven't been able to start construction, obviously, because we don't own it. And again, I'm not trying to tell you that nothing got done. Obviously, you guys purchasing, the city purchasing the property went a long, long way, and it's helping me a lot. But the next true step is for us to be able to get it in our name, go sit down with tenants, explain our plans, and then start signing leases. But again, can't sign leases when we don't own it. You know, can't go in for building permits, can't go in for lot splits, you know, can't get financing to construct a building. And the big thing for us is, and it probably won't happen anymore this year, unfortunately, but our goal was to try to start those access roads this year. So we saw some movement. Between us, we will put some yellow iron out there and we'll probably start moving some dirt. But our biggest fear is when we get into November and December, even though that site does have a lot of paving and drainage already there, we don't want to create a mud pit where now March, April, May, we're not doing anything because we're kind of stuck in the mud. So our plans are still, you know, the exact same. We have, you know, the community center and all that kind of stuff. I think the other thing that you have to understand from us, and maybe it was a little different from the other developer, is we are in lease negotiations with tenants. We are not allowed to tell you who they are. They make those announcements. They do that for many reasons. They don't like their name out there, and then for whatever reason, it doesn't happen, and then they look bad. So we will never announce a tenant. They will do that with you. And so, yeah, so I mean, I guess to answer your question, we have 4 or 5 tenants that we are in lease negotiations. We have agreed LOIs. Again, I can't tell you who those are. I think you'll be very happy with them. I think once we can get those signed and get the construction started, much more will come. And so I think one of the comments that I did hear was, you know, our plan is still to have a community center for that. You know, I think that was the big driver from everybody here, and we still plan, that is in the plans. But yeah, so I think I'll take any questions you have. I don't know. Again, I don't have any more than what we've talked about in previously.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Council, are there any questions? Or Mr. Mazur, anything to add? I guess let's start there.
Mr. President, I don't have much to add, just that we have been working, once we close, we have been working on this amendment. This would authorize the conveyance of the property to River Rock Development.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Council, any questions?
Mr. President,
Ms. Ackerman?
may I ask, I feel like this is a game show. May I ask if you can say the word retail or restaurant or,
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
are you allowed to utter the word retail?
Yeah, so I will tell you that right now that our primary focus has been restaurants up front and in the back, to kind of go with the community center to do a walkable area. And so we've, the ones that we have right now that are signed LOIs are all restaurants.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Thank you, Mike.
Mr.
Council-
President.
Mr. Walenzak.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the proposed item that we have in front of us there, it has Schedule 1, initial project plans. Obviously, project schedule, you've updated us on that. Is there any sketch drawing of what our plans are, or is it still fluid?
The rear is fluid still, because we're
Okay.
trying to figure out the sizes of the restaurants to wrap around the community center. I guess I also don't mind you, we do have a hotel in the rear that we're trying to figure out how that goes inside the community center. So I don't have a sketch right now that's 100% accurate.
Yeah, but it's something that worked, that explains everything I needed to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walenzak. Thank you, Mike. Council, additional questions? We appreciate you guys being here this evening with us as well. Council, if there's no further questions on item 173 of 2024, I'll seek a motion to move it to next week's agenda.
Mr. President.
Mr. Walenzak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I make a motion to move item number 173 of 2024 next week's regular meeting agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenzak. Seconded by Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Drake. We have a motion by Mr. Wallenzak, seconded by Mr. Drake to move item 173 of 2024 to next week's agenda. Counselor, are there any objections? Hearing none, item 173 is moved to next week's agenda. We've got a couple more pieces we'll talk about. We'll go through reports first, and then we'll come back to the further business. We will start with the mayor's report. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President and Council. I just want to make you aware that we are still actively pursuing opportunities in our industrial park. And we sure hope that we could come forward with something to present to you. Possibly, what would you say, Mr. Major, sometime in November or December, or with a real, something that I think you'll really enjoy.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mazur.
Thank you, Mr. President. One item is that the sneak peek of the Oregon Town Center residential properties is this Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. at Hannon's Garage Bar in Monroe Street in Toledo. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Mr. Roman.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. From my standing committee, we were going to have meeting with the Oregon Rec Department, which we still are on next Monday, instead of 5:30, since there will be no ordinances that we are going to talk about. We'll just get the, instead of 5:30, we'll make it 6 o'clock for a review of what programs and how things went for the summer. So it's not really a committee meeting, it's just a review meeting. So thank you very much. That'll be next Monday, the 28th at 6 o'clock, probably either in here or in the council chambers. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mrs. Polliff.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Polliff. Mr. Wallenzak.
No report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenzak. Mrs. Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's the tree commission met and Mr. Major has submitted a grant application to Synovus for, they'd like to put 43 trees in the pickleball court area and landscape that a little nicer. That kind of looks like a lunar landing right now. But Synovus has been very generous in offering us the opportunity to apply for grants. And so we're starting here around the municipal building and hope to move into adopt a tree for our citizens soon. And I'd also remind everybody that the Oregon Community Collection Day, which is also sponsored by Synovus, that to make it worth their while, clean out your garage and ever bring those things that we don't want in our water or dumped in the ground so that they can be properly disposed of. I want to thank the city for working with Synovus to bring that event about. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerman. Mr. Slander.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing from my standing committee. Just one quick thing, since Oregon Community Theater is now finished with their show. Just want to mention, I know it's not Oregon, but in a neighboring community, Genoa Civic Theater, which I'm on, or a actor in, we're doing our play this weekend. So come out and see us. Have a date night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Genoa. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Slander. Mr. Drake.
No report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. And I have no report from my standing committee. Council, we do have two items of further business before us this evening to kind of tee these up. Both of these were conversations that were had, and one is the TIF district, which we will need to act on. Neither was going to be ready for presentation. One's a discussion point. One will be an agenda item in the future, possibly walked on to the meeting on the 28th. So I wanted the administration to have the opportunity to bring those forward. With that, Mr. Mazur, we'll kick it to you on the town center names. We'll work through that one, then we'll go to the second one if that works.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And this should be real easy. We're not going to do anything with the name changes on the streets.
Perfect. We love those kinds of discussions.
I don't know if you want a long drawn out explanation or not.
No,
or
we're
we can
good
just leave it
with,
at that.
we're good with the
Okay.
Reader's Digest version. We will
Very
move
good.
into the town center residential TIF.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. President. And this one's a little bit more important. As we've been discussing, we have several TIF districts that we're putting together. Right now, we have one in place, and that's for where the apartments will hopefully be built here soon. This next one is for the residential TIF area, which is where the houses are being built. So now that they're under construction, by the end of the year, in order for this to have full impact and benefit to the city, we have to pass it by the end of the year. So the area is where the houses are being built. And I think Cassie's pulling up the map right now. Notifications for this have been sent out to all of the property owners, including the ones across the street. So we had to include the properties across the street. It's to our benefit. As soon as it comes off there. Okay, there it is. You can see it, that's an overlay district. So any TIF revenues that come in to the city would have to be to benefit any of these properties. We expanded it to across the street just to give us the flexibility, although our intention is to use the TIF proceeds that we receive and pay off the debt service for the roads that have already been constructed, which we should be able to do. And I think that's what all the funds will go towards, that debt service. I don't think it will generate enough to go towards anything else, but this just gives us more flexibility in the event that we're able to use the funds somewhere else. So on November 12th, so we scheduled a public hearing for this, which is required to set up a TIF district. The public hearing is scheduled for November 12th. That is Tuesday. That is the day after Veterans Day. So Veterans Day is on a Monday. So the assumption is that we'll have the city council meeting on the following Tuesday. I believe that's customary when council meetings when there's a holiday, the council meetings are the following day. So we scheduled it for Tuesday, November 12th. After that public hearing, what we're planning to do is bring that piece of legislation to city council for the committee of the whole meeting on December 2nd, but it can't be passed until December 16th. So it has to wait 30 days after the public hearing before it can be passed. And since we'll have a budget meeting on December 16th, and assuming that city council doesn't want to have a council meeting on December 23rd, we would have to have a special council meeting on December 16th to pass this. So that's what we're planning on doing. Just wanted to walk everybody through that process and just inform everybody that that's what will be coming to you for review and consideration. And that's all I have on the TIF district, and unless anybody has questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Appreciate that. Council, any questions regarding the TIF district at this time?
Mr. President.
Mr. Walenzak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Mazur, was there any consideration of extending that across Brown Road to the Menards outlet?
Actually, no. This was an add-on in the end. We were just going to include the properties themselves because likely that's where the TIF revenues are going to go, is just strictly to the debt service for the roads.
Well, I'm just thinking if, say, 10 years from now, the Menards outlots do get developed, wouldn't we want to capture that?
This overlay district, so we're only TIFing the actual houses.
Just the houses, okay.
Yeah, and the remaining portion is any revenues from the houses
Is where
could
you
go
can,
towards the benefit of
Gotcha.
those other properties.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walenzak. Council, any additional questions? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Appreciate the update on the information there and the expediency of item 1 in that. So with nothing further before us, I'd seek a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Pauloff. Council, is there any objection? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.